the cover on the front, otherwise the record store wouldn't take it. But here we were at Factory, and nobody really cared, and nobody talked about sales because no one really imagined anyone would buy it. Shall we put Unknown Pleasures? Well, there was a kind of maybe, but perhaps a bit obvious. I then said, well, do we put Joy Division? And they weren't too bothered about that either. I guess what it did do was it set this product apart from the processes of business. It quite plainly didn't care whether you bought it or not.
And we could dance, 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 dance to the radio. Dance, 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 dance to the radio. Dance, 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 dance to the radio. Dance, 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 dance to the radio.
Released in June 1979, Unknown Pleasures was a big success. Factory could now think of itself as a label with a future. One that could release albums by other, more experimental acts it managed, such as A Certain Ratio.
What our mission was to be as different as possible. One year we were listening to Sex Pistols, The Damned, people like that, and 6 months later listening to Brian Eno, Kraftwerk, James Brown, you know, just stuff at the totally the other end of the spectrum. Tony allowed us to do a lot of things that we wouldn't normally do. At a meeting one day, he says, right, I want you to go and record your first album in New York. I mean, if you're 19, what are you going to say to that?
But the first to be recorded was by the Duritty Column, now with only one surviving member, Vinnie Riley. After only 3 days in the studio with Martin Hannett, the album The Return of the Duritty Column, FAC 14, was completed.
That first album, I hated it because it bore no resemblance to anything that I'd played, really. The sound was so different to the sound I had. I always used like a space echo delay thing, and I had a very warm, thick sound to the guitar, and he'd made it very thin and spiky sounding, which I hated.
Factory had another surprise in store for Vinnie. The album's cover was made of sandpaper, another nod to the Situationists.
The sandpaper cover is Tony's. It's an art gesture moment of publishing, where a book is made with a cover that destroys your other books. And Tony thought this was a nice idea for a record cover.
It will destroy all the other records in your collection from within. Oh, bollocks, you know, it's sandpaper.
The sandpaper and the glue used buckled the cover, twisted the record inside. I mean, it actually did more damage to the record inside than it did to any other record.
People complained because they bought the record and got it home and there'd be bits of glass panes, rubbish everywhere, all over the vinyl, so it was great.
He stuck the sandpaper on. Vinnie couldn't do it because of his nails.
That's not true at all. Hawkey's a cheeky bugger.
I've still got one somewhere. Still, the sandpaper's not come off. I've thought about using the sleeve, but no.
Joy Division became the look and sound of Manchester's Factory. And while Paul Morley and the new generation of NME writers championed the band, they were busy writing their greatest songs. They looked unstoppable.
When routine lies hard and ambitions are low and resentment rises.
Joy Division had recorded their second album, Closer, and was set for their first tour of America. But Curtis was debilitated by his epilepsy, his medication, and arguments with his young wife, Debbie, over an affair he was now having with a Belgian fan, Annick Honor. After a failed suicide attempt, Curtis finally took his own life on 18th of May 1980, the night before Joy Division was set to leave for the States. Iggy Pop's The Idiot was on his record turntable.
Who knows what really went on that night? Who knows what really happened? He was on his own that night. He'd seen Debbie, and they'd had an argument, and then he spent most of the night on his own, and who knows what went through his head.
Whatever happened between Debbie and Ian on that last night was, well, I'd say, was quite obviously what finished him off. You know, he felt he couldn't cope with it anymore, and that was it. You know, none of us were there. He didn't phone anybody up.
We had been warned twice. We'd been warned by the fact he took an overdose of fucking tablets, and our response was, like the line from Closer, it's a cry for help, a plea for anaesthesia. Wrong. Secondly, I'd been warned on a train to London 2 weeks earlier by Annick. I said, what do you think of the new album? She goes, I'm terrified. I said, what are you terrified of? Don't you understand? He means it. And I go, no, he doesn't mean it. It's art. And guess what? He fucking meant it.
Cry like a child, though these years make me older. With children, my time is so wastefully spent.
I think we're a bunch of silly cunts, the fact that we didn't see it coming. And we didn't. We really didn't.
We never really listened to Ian's words, you know. We did after he died, obviously. But we never really listened to his words, because that was kind of, that's his private business, you know. They seemed very personal, just let him get on with that, you know, we'll get on with music.
The sleeve for Closer was already in production. Working with Peter Saville, the band had chosen an image by French photographer Bernard Pierre Wolff for the cover.
I hadn't heard anything. I didn't know what they were doing. I didn't know what they were writing. But I mean, the rest of the band didn't know what Ian was singing. And they chose an image together. And then, you know, some time later, Ian's died, and the record is in production, and the cover is at the printers. And I had to draw it to Tony's attention. We have a tomb on the cover.
Factory and the band stood by the original design.
When Ian Curtis dies, and I said it immediately, you know, and Wilson certainly did, you know, he's like a Hendrix, he's like a Jim Morrison, a Janis Joplin. Everyone goes, don't be daft, you know, it's like just a kid, you know. But you kind of go, no, you know, this will develop, this will grow.
It's not the usual kind of, you know, rock and roll suicide or death due to alcohol or to drugs. He meant what he said when he wrote the songs. I think that people recognize that. You can sort of see the Joy Division story and the Factory story that goes on from that as the last true story in pop.
Me, creatively, I was dead after that.
It made you feel like none of it was worth it, really. You felt like you'd achieved nothing because you lost Ian.
And we were like, well, what do we do? We don't, you know, no plans, and we didn't have a plan B.
The group called Joy Division would never perform again. Its surviving members buried the name, along with Ian Curtis. Joy Division alone had given Factory financial success, stability and visibility. The label now found itself in need of another successful band.
Everybody was waiting for the next Joy Division, the next band that was going to start generating.
I totally thought it was going to be Ray's show, but it wasn't, was it?
No.
January 1981. Wilson took a certain ratio to New York to record their first album and play some gigs. With them were New Order, a rechristened three-piece Joy Division, scheduled to play a few dates to try out new material. Unfortunately, all their equipment was stolen from an unlocked van. Wilson delivered the news with characteristic optimism.
Strange twist to the story, darling. Strange twist to the story. You'll never guess what's happened now. It's wonderful. It's wonderful. About what? He said, you've had all your equipment stolen.
The last vestiges of everything that was connected with Joy Division had gone.
And we're like, what? Oh, shit. What about the gigs, you know? And then Rob phones up the insurance.
Don't worry, I'll sort it out. Oh, yeah, I used to work in insurance. And he gets on the phone.
We've had all our equipment stolen. Where are you? New York. Did you have the van and arm? No. And we were like...
We weren't insured. Fuck.
New Order were growing up in public, a situation made worse by the decline of Martin Hannett, who produced their first album, Movement, with a heavy heart and a drug addiction.
I think of all of us, the one person who was affected worst by Ian's death was Martin. But he never really talked to us about it.
Martin was pretty messed up by now, you know, so that was a further difficulty, because he was just turning up. He wasn't turning up messed up, but by the end of the session he was pretty messed up.
When he went through his drug addiction, he was even worse, more difficult to deal with. So Bernard and I made a decision that we were just going to learn what he did and get rid of him, which we did.
There were to be more New York trips for New Order. With fourth band member Gillian Gilbert, they began fusing the electronic sounds and beats of a dance music now being heard in the city's hippest clubs with elements of British rock and pop. The new Joy Division were fast becoming Factory's new saviours when they noticed something.
We're playing these clubs, Hurrahs and Danceteria in particular. And these clubs are wonderful.
There's a lot of new things happening, like hip-hop was just starting. It was very underground at the time.
Everything was just radically different. It was completely mind-blowing. Rob and I said at that time, and Bernard just went, this is what it's got to be like. This is what it's got to be like. This is the future, you know.
We get back to England and we all think, why isn't there one of these here in Manchester? And in particular, Gretton thought it and decided there should be one, to which me and Erasmus go, no,